Hello and welcome to this edition of A Page from History. I am Neelanjan Mukhopadhyay. The state of Uttar Pradesh versus Raj Narayan. This was a legal way to refer to the case. It resulted in one of the most dramatic chapters of Indian political history. The case in fact was very simple. Samyukt Socialist Party leader Raj Narayan lost to Indira Gandhi from Rai Bareli in 1971 general elections. He filed an election petition alleging that she misused official position and violated electoral laws. The case dragged on for 4 years. For the first time, the Prime Minister of this country appeared in the witness box. She was grilled for 5 long hours. The judgment 40 years ago shocked people. The election of Indira Gandhi was set aside and she was disqualified from contesting any election for 6 years. How Indira Gandhi circumvented the High Court verdict and continued being Prime Minister is important to understand. This process virtually subverted the entire constitutional process. I am joined by 3 eminent experts to discuss what, to my mind, is one of the darkest chapters of Indian history. My first guest on this program is Abhijit Bhattacharya, a well-known lawyer of the Supreme Court, someone who has also been a civil servant before embarking on a legal career. Siddharth Mishra, well-known journalist, consulting editor with the Millennium Post. Finally, I have Manindranath Thakur, political scientist, teaches political science at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome to the program, all of you. Manindra Thakur, let me begin with you to try to understand the 1970s, one of the most politically turbulent decades Indian history has witnessed. Can we actually get a political sense in the backdrop to which where the Allahabad High Court judgment came up, which created such a dramatic turn in Indian politics?
Yeah, I think the 70s, early 70s, late 60s and early 70s was a very interesting time. This was a time when there was a major structural change was also taking place. You know, the euphoria of the freedom struggle and the leaders emerged after that as leaders of India. That euphoria was going away. So people were looking for new leadership, new kind of leadership. There was a big aspiration that people were having all around. Then we had Green Revolution. Impact of that, rise of the new class, what some people say bullock cart capitalist class, looking for new space in politics. So the politics, the arena of politics was almost being contested. And the gate was more or less closed. So the new rural elite emerging, new caste, class combinations emerging, they were looking for this space. And since the euphoria was dead, or it was going away, withering away, so people were now evaluating everybody. So that was a very turbulent time. It was a time when Indian politics was supposed to be opened. And the ruling classes were not ready to open that. And Indira Gandhi, representing that kind of earlier this thing, was not really understanding how this class waiting to board should be accommodated. That was a time when actually these things were happening. So anti-corruption movement or the feeling that state was not doing enough.
Basically the failure that, the Garibi Hatao slogan with which Indira Gandhi came and did so well in 1971 elections, and then within a few months she emerged as a victorious person in the 1971 war, leading India to such a important military victory. Thereafter not being able to really control, which led to a lot of political challenge to the ground where Indira Gandhi was conducting the
politics. I think
that is what was
the Garibi Hatao and the war, they were temporary relief for that kind
but
of
the real crisis was something completely different, and that is what was being articulated in political agitations, and in the middle of that, bang in the middle of that, precipitating the whole thing, came the Allahabad High Court verdict. Siddharth Mishra, a journalist sense of 70s of the Allahabad High Court, a very routine matter usually happens. Someone gets elected, petitions are always filed. But here was a petition against the person who had also become the Prime Minister of India. Case dragged on for a long period of time. Was there any sense before the months before the verdict came out in June 1975 that something as dramatic like that can happen?
First I would like to add to what Manindra had said. I don't know if you recall, I think most of us will recall, we had a super duper hit from Bollywood called Roti Kapda Aur Makan, which came out at that point of time. And we had these three characters, Manoj Kumar playing the struggling young man trying to find this thing, the educated younger brother,
two ends meet,
two ends meet, and Amitabh Bachchan, who was in the army, and he comes back as a decorated soldier. So this is what got all juxtaposed, you know,
on one hand the struggle for daily existence,
and the victory in the war.
And the other victory in the war, and on the other hand a decline of moral values in politics.
Absolutely. So the victory in the war could not take the government of the day very far.
Right.
And there were existing problems on the ground. There was problems of black marketing, which was showed in that movie, poverty, controlled economy, unemployment, you know, amongst youth unrest. This all got reflected there. And so there was a general unrest in the country. And this case was going on, and that was not the time when you had the television and the radio was a government radio.
So hardly any newspapers.
There were hardly any newspapers, and there was and the radio was the government radio. So, you know, people were getting, you know, the only thing was that, you know, two big lawyers, where, you know, you had Nani Palgewala
on one side and you had Shanti Bhushan on the
other side. And actually, till then, Jagmohan Lal Sinha, the judge, was dwarfed by the stature of these two lawyers, you know, and one really did not, you know, he became a icon, a judicial icon, only after he delivered the judgments. And, you know, you had the two people on the two sides, and you see, look at it, you know, though Balkiwala defended Mrs. Gandhi in this...
Later on, he became one of her staunchest critics.
Yeah, no, after she imposed emergency, he withdrew as her lawyer. He withdrew as a lawyer, and he was then made by Janata government ambassador to US. So, you see, there was a general unrest in the country, and there was, because of the presence of these two judicial titans in the courtroom, there was a feeling, and of course the Prime Minister was attending the court as a witness in the witness box. So there was a thing, some people were looking forward to it.
Something dramatic was happening.
But then till
no one knew that what exactly would
happen. The
people
had not thought, you know, we were still in a very, we were coming out, as Manindra had said, we were changing from the colonial generation to the new generation, you know. Until then, nobody had really thought that a High Court judge could, you know, take on the Prime Minister of the country. And when that happened, that proved to be the, you know, threshold in the history.
Let me bring in Abhijit Bhattacharya at this point. Mr. Bhattacharya, if I can you know, bring you into this debate at this point. Two important points. One is that we have actually been able to draw a fairly comprehensive political backdrop to the Allahabad High Court verdict coming out. And the second is this point which Siddharth Mishra made, you know, that at that point very few people thought that an ordinary mortal like a High Court judge would be able to rattle the Prime Minister of this country.
That to Indira Gandhi.
That to Indira Gandhi.
Very true. I fully agree with what my good friend Mishraji said. But you know, when the case came up and the verdict was given on 12 June
75.
Wednesday, no, it was a Thursday, 1975. The beauty was of the fact was that the judge, Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha, he also gave 20 days time to go for the other court, higher authorities.
But wasn't that only a subsequent thing after an application was filed?
Yes, yes.
So Motu on his own, the judge
that's
did
right.
not.
First it was saying...
Why should he? Yes.
No. That's what I'm saying. I'm just making it, you know...
But he was fair enough. He said that I have given this verdict, but once the appeal came, that please at least give us time to be able to resolve this issue.
I'm giving you 20 days time.
20 days so that you can actually find somebody to become the Prime Minister.
He did what he did. Right. And my honorable colleague has rightly said that no one thought that a judge who was supposed to be in front of Palkiwala and in front of Shanti Bhushan Sahab, I mean, he did not figure
at all. Shanti Bhushan was pleading Rajanayan's case, so in any case, Shanti Bhushan
nevertheless,
eventually turned out to be on the side of the judge.
But when this particular verdict went to the Supreme Court, the vacation judge was Justice Iyer, the great judge. I mean, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, who died recently, I think, after crossing 100.
2013.
One of the best judges of the Supreme Court has ever produced.
Right.
Whether it was scholastic ability or erudition or analysis or balance, everything. He said one word, I'm quoting from his verdict: life is larger than law. And in that was something which was so significant. He says, yes, law is there. But in overall perspective, when you come to see the judgment, he did give stay. But that was again a conditional stay.
He did not give powers to Indira Gandhi to vote in Parliament.
Yes.
So she was virtually a half an MP.
Yes.
An
So
member of Parliament
itself,
with just half the rights.
after getting the first shock from the High Court, the second shock came
by the vacation judge.
Vacation judge Justice Iyer on 24th June.
Right.
So imagine within a span of 12 days, two verdicts, both going against the Indira Gandhi was Indira Gandhi.
Right.
You see, on that particular point in time, no
It was
one
difficult
in
to imagine.
India,
it was difficult to think of anyone who could challenge
verdict
Indira
from
Gandhi.
Allahabad and verdict from Supreme Court Delhi. And Delhi is the Raisina Hill.
Right.
And just across from Tilak Marg, a verdict comes from a single bench.
Right.
Justice Iyer, he also
So
did
truly a very dramatic moment in Indian history.
Absolutely.
I'll have to take a break at this point. We'll come back and resume this conversation.
All right, okay.
The Allahabad High Court judgment was in fact one of the many woes that Indira Gandhi faced after frittering away the extraordinary mandate she secured in 1971. In many ways, it was also probably the last straw. Stay with us. This program will continue. Welcome back to a page from history. 40 years ago, in a brave judgment, Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha set aside the election of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She was also disqualified from holding any elected office for 6 years. Siddharth Mishra, we were talking about how the dramatic Allahabad High Court judgment was, so how people probably did not expect such a judgment. But once the judgment came out, let's try to go back and assess what was the political reaction. We already had a fairly full-blown opposition movement trying to destabilize the government, trying to create a nationwide protests were happening. We started from Gujarat, going up to Bihar, becoming enveloping the whole of the country slowly. In a situation like that, how would you paint the political reaction both within the Congress as well as within the opposition?
You see, as you said, that there was a kind of storm building up, but still, there was agitation. The socialists have been agitating against the Congress for a very long time, and they have been joined.
Say that socialists have always agitated.
They have always agitated, and they were joined by people from the right.
Most importantly, they're joined by the Jan Sangh.
By the Jan Sangh, and
JP came into the fray, gave it the moral leadership.
Absolutely. So you see, but till then, I don't think that they had the confidence that they can really do it.
Right.
Because in '67 they had a chance, but then in Indira, showed them their place in '71, so they could do it.
So, but when basically you're saying, that the opposition at that point was looking for a trigger to actually from a slow, steady canter to go into a
because it shifted the gears. The judgment shifted the gears.
Right.
It took the agitation into the top gear.
Right.
And they said, and they had a reason to ask for her resignation.
Right.
She has been disqualified by the court. The Supreme Court has not given.
In fact, there's this amazing account which I read. That on the 20th of June, Indira Gandhi held a huge rally at the Boat Club in Delhi, which was followed by an opposition rally on the 22nd of June. At the last minute, the Indian Airlines plane from Calcutta, which was supposed to bring JP to Delhi, could not fly because of technical problems. So he was never there at the rally. Despite that, Morarji Desai was there and the others were there. So it reflected the kind of fear which had been instilled within the government and within the Congress.
And if you look at the other side, as I said, for opposition got the trigger.
Right.
And the court having given that kind of order, panic set into the Congress. That look, this can happen to us. The court has given an order against Indira Gandhi. What next? This has never happened before.
Let me ask Abhijit Bhattacharya, was there any reason for panic? If you actually go back and look at the petition from what I'm not a legal expert, but from what I understand, that out of the 14 specific allegations that were leveled, the judge did not take into account 12 of them. It dismissed, acquitted her of 12 charges. It was only on 2 charges, one of the issue of spending, and the other is probably on the issue of
use of government machinery.
Use of government machinery. There was also one that the government machinery was used to build a platform so that she could stand. So, was it such a serious charge that for the government to get so and the Congress party to get so worried?
No, sir. It's not a question of charge. It's a question of the verdict. Verdict had said that you are unseated for 6 years.
Right.
So, moment you are unseated.
But didn't Indira Gandhi or the Congress know that they had legal recourse also?
Well, the point is the verdict, once the court verdict comes, the next course of action is to counter the verdict. You have to counter the court with going to the higher court.
Right.
You can't do it with any political rally.
Right.
Fact means.
So why were they having political rallies?
But precisely, political rally 20th, 22nd,
Right.
and then again the verdict comes on 24th, Justice Iyer.
Right.
That was the last straw. And 25th comes the emergency, rather midnight. I recall 25th was a Wednesday. There comes the emergency. So within a span of 12 days, now what happened? After the Allahabad verdict, the ruling party of Delhi told the judge that, Lordship, kindly put it give a stay, because we have to go for a new leader. We have to elect a new leader. So now at the moment, if there is no prime minister, there's going to be chaos, there's going to be confusion, there is going to be anarchy in the countryside. So prime minister's
we need a prime minister first.
So
the court would
cannot
have
be left
accepted
vacant. That is the point. At that point in time, Jagmohan Lal Sinha Sahab, he said, all right, 10 days or that 20 days, carry on, now you settle the issue. Now instead of electing a new this thing, in the Congress
Let
meeting,
me ask, on this electing, let's go back and try to understand the Congress. There definitely was one section within the Congress party, Maninder Thakur, which was trying to say that let us have a new leader. There be a non-controversial leader who is acceptable to all sides. People even took the name of Swaran Singh at that time, if you actually read the accounts of that time. Yet there was a very insecure coterie which felt that if some other person becomes the prime minister, then we are going to lose out on being so close to the power. I'm not taking any names because these are not really substantiated things, but nonetheless political accounts and political scientists, you have all studied all that. Do you think that there was any real possibility within the Congress party of having an alternate leader, or was that option simply closed as far as the Congress leaders were concerned?
I think, as the records say, that in the
whatever little from records, statements, press
that's
releases,
the diaries and all.
Yeah.
So it seems that Mrs. Gandhi was almost ready to make a new leader, select somebody for the prime ministership. But Sanjay Gandhi was not ready for that. And by then probably she was very much dependent on Sanjay Gandhi. And people waited for him to arrive. He was outside. He was in a Maruti factory and he came. And then he said that no, nothing doing. You are not going to resign. And then he took over everything. I think the senior leaders were not very happy about it. They thought that probably withdrawing for some time would give her more legitimacy, which she was losing in a big way. And
in any case, she was losing popular support.
So
there were agitations all across the country.
Exactly. And Allahabad High Court actually was also indicative that she was losing support. Because the rally that was organized in her support was more or less manufactured rally. It was not real support. She was told that this is your popularity. But she also believed, and people generally believed, that it was all organized thing. I mean, event management was there. So probably she could not manage to take that bold decision. And of course, it was a shock for her. Before she could be ready for taking such kind of thing, the coterie and the leaders around did not allow her to do that.
Right. Siddharth Mishra, later on at various points, while talking to some of her biographers at a later point, Mrs. Gandhi did talk about this particular episode and as to what really went through her mind at the time when after the verdict came out. One point which came out was that despite what Maninder Thakur is saying is that later on possibly she rationalized that why should she have quit. So she said, that what other option did I have but to continue to be in office and find ways so that I could continue. I had to do it for the stability and for the security of the country. Now, do you think that kind of a build-up is, the argument which she built later on, spread through the world through her biographers, would that really have reflected the truth, or do you think that she would have really considered that stepping aside? We are talking about Indira Gandhi, the personality as we understand it. What is your assessment?
You see, the question was how grave was the crime for which she was convicted. And I don't know if you recall one of the headlines of Times of India of those times. Prime Minister dismissed for traffic ticket. Traffic ticket.
In fact, it was an editorial, not one of the reports.
Editorial.
And it was the editorial, if I'm not wrong, was written by an editor who was known for weakness towards Mrs. Gandhi at that particular time.
At one hand we had people who were convinced that it was not that grave a crime.
Right.
And this was part of a security protocol that she required this government machinery around her. And till then nobody had really, you see, today elections are fought very differently.
Right.
Today people are, as soon as dates are declared,
immediately now you have the model code of conduct.
Model code of conduct, all the beacon lights comes out.
The day the dates is announced.
Absolutely. Yes. But in those days, this election commission
there was a very rudimentary and archaic code of conduct which was not implemented.
Which was not implemented.
You had laws which were completely ambiguous.
You had an invisible election commission which was not to be seen.
In fact, let's try to understand from Abhishek Bhattacharya what was election commission, what was electoral laws then and now.
Well, sir, the election commission became election commission after the advent of TN session.
Right.
Whether love him or hate him, you cannot.
The point is that there was a transformative change
there
at that
was
point.
An electrifying effect. In my civil service days, I have done 6 election commission election observers. First 2 in the 98 and 98-2 and 2000, electrifying. I don't know how it is now, but reports are mixed. TN session, when he became election commissioner, he was being made by Rajiv Gandhi Sahib.
Right.
When we became too powerful, then the same Congress on 16th October 1989 said, no, not one man, you have 3 men.
3 men.
And Rajiv Gandhi lost the election,
right.
December 1989. Comes Vishwanath Pratap Singh, no, 1 man back,
right.
1990. Again 1991.
But when it was made 3 men for a long time, Mr. Session did not allow the other 2 election commissioners
exactly.
to function properly.
But 1 minute, sir. But I can tell you one thing. That 1 man effectiveness was just mind-boggling. Even in Kanyakumari or even
so what was the precise law in the 70s? You know, when 71, this election that we are talking about, 2 issues on which there was this basic condition that whether the election expense of friends and relatives can be added on to the candidates.
That's right.
And the amount spent by the party.
That was.
Whether should it be part of the candidate's
expenditure. That was subsequently overruled by the Supreme Court judgment of 7th November 1975,
right.
5-judge bench.
Right.
I've got the copy thereof.
Right.
That was overruled. I said nothing doing. If someone, you are the candidate. I am your friend and he is his relation and he is also his relation.
But there is also a narrative, especially from the opposition. This is something which has been consistently argued by those leaders who were part of the Jansangh at that point, who are part of the BJP right now, that the Supreme Court verdict in November 1975 was actually all just a hogwash because in any case there was, fundamental rights had been suspended and the judiciary was virtually acting like, completely in cahoots with the government, with the executive.
Sir,
the independence and the liberty which the judiciary displayed when Justice Sinha gave that verdict was not there in November, from June onwards.
Quite right, sir. Sorry.
You see, judgment after a while had become immaterial.
Which judgment?
The Jagmohan Lal Sinha, politically.
Right.
Because, as I said, it acted as a trigger.
For Indira Gandhi to get worried and paranoid
and opposition to get emboldened. And opposition to get emboldened, and then the emergency came in. Yes. Emergency came in.
And the entire opposition was put behind
bars and everything. So we went into, and then it became things of academic interest. Politically, we had moved far ahead.
Right.
We had got that propellant
from
the
really
judgment.
Of no, it really had no impact whether the verdict was upheld or not upheld.
So it became,
as far as the people were concerned, that Indira Gandhi had done something grossly wrong, for which the Allahabad High Court had penalized her, and that she was clinging on to power by illegal means.
Say in the countryside, by High Court ne unke khilaf kaha.
Right.
So she got that infamy from that judgment.
So regardless of the fact that she continued to be Prime Minister, she lost the popular narrative.
Absolutely. And she, in the people's perception, she lost the mandate.
The mandate. She did not have any more further moral leverage to continue to be Prime Minister. We'll take a short break at this point and then come back and resume this conversation. When autocrats get pulled up, or rather when they get pulled up by laws and judicial verdicts, they often enact new laws. Indira Gandhi did the same. After imposing emergency, she enacted the 39th Amendment of the Indian Constitution. It placed the election of the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister and the Speaker of the Lok Sabha beyond the scrutiny of courts. Stay tuned in. This program will continue. Come back to a page from history. It is 40 years since the Allahabad High Court passed a judgment unseating Indira Gandhi. It triggered dramatic political developments in an already turbulent India. Manindra Thakur, one of the key points that we are talking about is that we had the Allahabad High Court verdict. A few days later, the Supreme Court gave a temporary stay, not a complete respite to Indira Gandhi because she did not have voting rights as a member of parliament. She decided to, because of also in the galvanizing spirit of the opposition, decided to impose emergency, something which has been very controversially even today been said, that was a suggestion made by Siddharth Shankar Ray, the Chief Minister of West Bengal. This is something which has been said by no less a person than the President of India, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. A few days later, emergency gets sets into place, the entire opposition is taken in. And then sometime in August, Parliament passes a new law, a constitutional amendment, taking out the offices of President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Speaker, out of the courts can no longer interfere. How do you go back and look at it? What really probably triggered or rather, led Indira Gandhi to take such a decision?
I think, as I said earlier, I want to insist on this point that there has been a lot of writing about Indira Gandhi's personality, authoritarian personality and all. Despite all this, I think that she had certain kind of element of being part of the national movement. And I would tend to believe that in her first reaction to the judgment, she was not really looking for suddenly becoming an authoritarian. It gradually came to her. Gradually she decided that no, I have to stand up.
Pre-Allahabad High Court verdict, you don't see any authoritarian traits in her?
Not much. I mean, she was a kind of powerful leader, and she was having a kind of strong ideas about things. But even after the judgment, actually, I mean, the first reaction of hers, I would think that she would consider to step down.
It was because of people like Sanjay Gandhi and others.
People around her told her, and then she stood up, and then Indira Gandhi was Indira Gandhi once she took up the position.
Yes.
And then she didn't want to leave anything.
Once she took up a cause, there was no holding back, and once she decided to take up the cause of Indira Gandhi herself, then there was no way that you could hold on to.
Very difficult to hold on her. Then she wanted to make everything proper.
But what did an amendment to the constitution like that do to the spirit of constitution? I'm not talking about what the court later on said, but purely as a political scientist, what is your reading?
I think that would be a very, very bad amendment, and that actually did not have any acceptance even in the people. I think after the verdict, this kind of amendment gave the impression that she has turned to be an authoritarian, and she is just not going to respect the institutions. In fact, some people wrote that time that it was not expected from daughter of Pandit Nehru, who was
during the emergency, people would not have been able to write, or even if they would have written, it would not been published.
A lot of people actually wrote
writing
after that, writing underground, and this was, I think I was a small child that time during the emergency in the school and coming out and doing a lot of activities as a child also. I mean, I was in class 7th or 8th that time. I remember that was the impression that we got, that no, we don't want.
No, there definitely was a lot of, even I grew up around the same time in northern India, and I do remember that even during emergency there was a lot of discourse in non-official circles, informally, in whisper campaigns, where a lot of negative points would be made about Indira Gandhi. She definitely was not the darling of the people at that time.
Yes, and this kind of amendment was not being, it was taken as another step by her, which could turn her into an authoritarian personality and a leader, which people were not ready to accept. Just coming out from the movement and having a democracy of this kind, we were not ready to get back to the situation. I think so. This amendment was not a good sign for Indian democracy. And neither the people took it as good sign for Indian democracy.
Let me ask Abhijit Bhattacharya something which I have been itching for a long time, with your understanding of legal issues. Quite often, there's this this editorial in the Times of India was referred to, that she was, given a jail for issuing a traffic ticket. There has been a fairly sensible opinion in this country which says that the judgment of Justice Sinha was just too harsh on Mrs. Gandhi. She did not commit as big a crime to be unseated for 6 years. What is your view?
You
on
see,
this?
my view is very simple.
How do you look at the case?
My view, politically I can comment, but being a practicing advocate, I will not speak about the merits or demerits of the
I would
particular
not,
case.
obviously not.
Now I will tell you only one thing. When the judgment came, the judgment of the Supreme Court on 7th November 1975,
yeah.
I will just tell you
Yes.
a last para, virtually para 696 of the judgment. It says, it's a 5-bench judge. There is no merit in the contention that the constitutional amendment is bad because it was passed when some members of the parliament were in detention. So court saying, Supreme Court,
Yes.
that there is no thick perfect
That
order.
they were not there present, but still it was fine to
It
have
was
passed
fine.
a law.
Now next line. The legality of the detention orders cannot be canvassed in these appeals collaterally, because from a practical point of view, the presence of 21 members of the Lok Sabha and 10 members of the Rajya Sabha who were in detention could not have made a difference.
Yes, would not have, with the kind of numerical strength which Indira
So
Gandhi had.
therefore,
Yes.
so the point is,
So they are examining the amendment purely on the
legal issue.
on the legal validity of
Legal validity,
Yes.
point one, legal validity,
Right.
and there is nothing called ethics or morality. Law is law. You see, when you are going purely from the law point of view, when you say morally it's right, morally it's wrong, it is ethics, it's metaphysics. Now, the Justice Iyer also had said in his verdict on 24th June 1975 that, look, I being sitting in the chair of justice, I have no time to look into the various nitty-gritties of politics, politicking, this, that, there's no. So, rightly or wrongly, the judgment was there, and that judgment, again, it shook the political establishment in such a way that within 24 hours, rather within few hours, you had to impose emergency. So it is the judiciary which shook the entire country. There's no doubt. That
But
was
tell
the
me
first
something, after the Supreme Court gave some kind of a temporary respite, they were still hearing, so what if Indira Gandhi could not vote in Parliament? Siddharth Mishra said, she had enough numbers, she did not really need to vote. So what was the tearing hurry for her to impose emergency? It would obviously not have been caused just by the verdict of the Allahabad High Court of Justice Sinha.
I would say, I will use a cricket.
Or was it a cumulative?
I would use a cricket analogy.
Yes.
She lost form. She lost form, and and she took one bad
One
bad
wrong
politics
step
thing.
after another.
Yes, because you see, as you said, she had the numbers, she could carry the day with her. But then she got this law passed. Now, it was immaterial for people. It might have been material for the court. It was good in law or bad in law. But for people, she was bad. She had become bad.
And as
by
far as the
then.
people was concerned, they were
She
convinced
hasn't
that
convicted
she
by
got
the-
the law passed because the opposition leaders are in jail, and so there was no voice to stand up against her in Parliament.
And you see, and then like a batsman out of form who does all the gimmicks, opens the inning, comes first down, 3 down, 5 down. She tried everything, to regain that strength, but she did not realize that she was out of form. She has lost out on people's confidence, and she had to bow out, because you see, it was not a movement based on a legal thing. Legal was just was acting as the catalyst. There was a social movement. There was disenchantment with the economic policies of the government. There was poverty all around. There was unemployment all around. There was agitations happening. All these issues all around. So this, and she thought that if she got herself legally, what you call, she managed a legal catharsis, she would be able to overcome the political debacle. That was a wrong perception she had. It was
I would endorse 1 second, Siddharth Sahab. I will endorse what he is saying in toto. That is how, and that is why Justice Iyer on 24 June 75 had said, life is larger than law. That's what he is saying.
What is he really trying to imply? That
life is larger than law. Law is a part of life.
Right.
Life is not part of law. That's what he is trying to say, and I think I endorse his view.
So that's what, he by that time, she had lost the mandate of people, confidence of people. She had, and you see, the numbers, as the Supreme Court said, that the 31 in Lok Sabha and 10 in Rajya Sabha, but they were very eminent personalities who were behind bars. So it was not the quantity, it was the quality of leaders whom she had put behind bars. People would question, why was Vajpayee, why was Morarji, why was Jayaprakash behind bars? What crime had they committed? Why were they in jail? So, you know, and then there were great stories being made, and then there was a whole crop of new leaders coming up. As Manindra said, even I was a child at that point of time, and I recall, and I was in fact a neighbor of, you know, this Bihar lot in the Patna Medical College, and they had got us write slogans, Indra Bakhiya aur Mastan, loot rahe hain Hindustan. So she has, by that time, she was being equated with Haji Mastan and Bakhiya, who was the smuggler in Goa. So that was the mindset which had come into people, and then Ramdhari Singh Dinkar was being recited, Singhasan Khali Karoge Janta Aati Hai. So it had moved beyond, I think, judiciary. It has, and it was what laws were being passed in parliament, or what.
And that was the sheer irony, because he had been member of parliament from the Congress party.
From the Congress party. Morarji was part of her father's cabinet.
Right.
Hindu, you know, Jayaprakash called her Hindu, Hindu Meri Beti. So that is how the politics has moved on. People's anger had propelled the whole thing, and it was beyond judges and the parliament.
Right.
It was in the people's domain.
Right. People's domain
Also,
will.
I think she was feeling that these people, Morarji and Jayaprakash kind of people, were not taking her seriously.
Right.
She wanted to assert her power to tell them that, look, I am powerful.
Right. We'll take a little break at this point and then come back. I'll actually continue with you to discuss this point, you know, about her actually wanting more power at that particular time. Justice Sinha achieved great eminence and fame. This was very rare for a judge who was never elevated to the Supreme Court or even became a Chief Justice of a High Court. Books and news reports of that time said that shortly before the verdict was due, Justice Sinha had been offered inducements. He was even promised elevation to the Supreme Court. He, however, did not accept these offers and retired without much fanfare in 1982. India, unfortunately, is now extremely short of such people of such character. Do not go away. This program continues. Welcome back to A Page from History. We have been talking about the Allahabad High Court judgment that unseated Indira Gandhi and its political aftermath. Manindra Thakur, let's try to understand it from a political perspective. What did the Allahabad High Court verdict do to Indian politics? Not just to Indira Gandhi, not just to the Congress party, but overall, what did it do?
I think it was a turning point for Indian history, Indian political history. But this verdict, for the first time, showed that there is a kind of independent judiciary which can take on even a very powerful politician, and it has a legitimacy in the people. The best thing was that this is a non-elected institution of India, which is
in which there is tremendous faith.
Tremendous faith of the people, and that, I think, was established, and that turned the table towards the other side. And since then, I think no politician dare to take on the judiciary like that, and it's always kind of suspicion about the judiciary, despite the fact that there are a lot of stories about the appointments of the judges and all kind of things. But still, I think the impact of this judgment on the Indian politics was tremendous, and impact of post-judgment scenario on the Indian politics, I think, still it's looming large. Despite getting huge majority, no Prime Minister dared to think of even being seen like Indira Gandhi of emergency days. The image of that kind, nobody would like to own anymore. So every time when they have absolute majority, they would come to the public more and say that, look, I am for the people, and that's what's happening even today. So no matter whatever you do, you have to keep telling the people that you stand for them.
That my government is basically committed to the welfare of the people of this country.
But it showed that if you lose the legitimacy in the people, the majority doesn't matter. There could be a massive movement and you will lose the power.
It firmly established the spirit of Indian constitution, the 4 states. So here one state was trying to run roughshod over the other 3 states, the judiciary and the press. There was a press censorship and all that. But this judgment said established the independence of judiciary, as you mentioned, inducement, and there were talk of inducement, there were talk of offers and everything.
The entire popular belief that judiciary was something which could not be quote unquote bought.
And the press also largely stood its ground. Press also largely stood its ground. The independence of India. There were instances of collaborators.
But in this particular case, I would disagree with you, because I get reminded whenever anybody talks about the role of the media, I get reminded of what Mr. Advani once said, you know, that he wrote, you know, that during emergency the press was asked to bend and they crawled. I think that has really
You see,
become the most defining way.
But there were exceptions.
There were exceptions that I can count on fingers.
Indian
I can
Express
count,
and Statesman.
Indian Express did it. I can tell you that Nikhil Chakravarti shut down his magazine Mainstream.
No, but
You
Statesman.
can actually count on fingers the number of journalists who decided at that point.
Statesman and Indian Express.
Looking at the press from now,
Yes.
Statesman and Indian
condition of the
Express.
press today and during the emergency, and a lot of difference. I think today it's
No, of
much
course
more
there's a lot of
collaborative.
difference.
It's much more collaborative.
Yes, but at that time, during emergency, newspapers readily accepted to get their
You see, but
newspapers.
when I talk
Since it's of course on the 26th of June there was no edition because simply
Blank.
those
but you have
only one paper, not all.
But you see, you
Indian
have
Express
but,
gave it
but,
Indian
but
Express
you
came
see,
with a blank page.
But you see, it brought back the spirit of Ganesh Shankar Vidyarthi. It created many small newspapers. It created many small newspapers across country. When the big media houses decided to crawl,
No, it gave rise to remarkable poetry at that time.
remarkable poetry and even
Dushyant
prose,
Kumar,
Dushyant
Raghuveer
Kumar.
Sai writing some of the
Absolutely.
finest poems, in Hindi
and
literature.
people would
that's known.
subscribe to these papers. I remember even my father was a government servant, but still gave a subscription.
But let's
for
try
these
to
papers.
understand, let me try to ask you a very theoretical, a direct question. That in your reading of Indira Gandhi, Manindra Thakur says that pre-Allahabad High Court verdict, she was not an authoritarian leader. Post 12th of June, she becomes slowly, gradually an authoritarian leader and then runs its course through the emergency period. How do you read, do you think that the verdict was actually defining, change her personality?
You see, Indira was always a decisive leader.
Right.
Indira was always a decisive leader. So her decisions, when the situations were pro for her,
Right.
so she did it without any without getting any criticism about it.
Right.
But when the situation became difficult, her decision-making process, probably the processes were not that evolved at that point of time, where she could, do kind of a teamwork, which she should have done, and she took decisions on her own. She had to take decisions. She was in habit of taking decisions, and she took decisions, very tough decisions she took, and probably she took this, and she had come to be, influenced greatly by her son, who was not groomed in the traditions of Indian democracy.
Had definitely no understanding of Indian national movement.
Absolutely.
Yes, Abhijit, but
I think
There is a book by Wallace Hangen, After Nehru Who. You must read that book. That was published before the death of Nehru. Okay. Now, Nehru died today, 27th May 1964. Right. Now, forget not one thing, that Indira Gandhi was the only child. An only child was a lonely child. And Wallace Hangen, in the book After Nehru Who, he describes Indira Gandhi in the Allahabad big house, staying at home alone, father in jail and mother in sick bed. She was playing with toys. And वो कठपुतली क्या बोलते हैं, पुतला को क्या बोलते हैं?
Puppets.
So she would say, इसको ऐसा कर, ऐसा कर. So the point he tries to say, and well, perhaps he may be right, wrong, I don't know. That's a quote unquote. That Indira Gandhi was always very, very firm in her commitment and wanted to do what she wanted to do.
Right.
And in a way, that appears to be correct in retrospect. That Indira Gandhi was Indira Gandhi.
Okay. Indira Gandhi was Indira Gandhi.
Can I make a statement? I think it's very easy to analyze her as authoritarian personality after things have happened.
Yes,
That's right.
we have the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah. So, but also one has to understand that there could be a context.
She might have genuinely believed that Indian national security was jeopardized.
I think she took equally strong decision 10 years later. She is sending army to a Golden Temple, which was again a very tough and decisive decision.
What I think is that she had the capacity to take firm decisions, but also capacity to take people along with herself. And her diplomacy of inviting people on breakfast, lunch and dinner was well known, that any political leaders she would like to. And people have said that once she is sitting on the dining table, it's very difficult to defy her.
She would be the perfect host. And then she would be a very persuasive politician.
So that was her personality, I think. It's after that emergency thing that she got alienated from a lot of her good advisors. And she was crowded by only few people who were. So that, I think, had a toll on her personality, and that then she
in fact, the night before the Allahabad High Court verdict, D.P. Dhar, one of her long-standing associates, passed away. So it was actually, the 12th of June 1975 was actually a very unfortunate day for her in several ways. Abhijit Bhattacharya, Siddharth Mishra was saying that the judiciary came into its own also. The image of the judiciary. The first time ever judiciary came under public glare like that. Probably prior to that, whatever happened is good for textbooks.
Correct.
We keep on talking about the Keshavananda case, we talk about all these things, but these are all post facto. As far as the people are concerned, the judiciary first was seen as something which could not be surmounted by a political leader only through the Allahabad High Court judge.
I agree with him, I disagree with him, both.
Why do you disagree?
I agree with him because it was a very high profile case. But it does not say about the landmark judgments in the past being given by the judiciary on fundamental right itself, Golaknath onwards. Now, number one.
But they never became public cases, the media spread was very low,
Exactly.
there was no television, there was no direct confrontation. It was
fine, but executive
sir, the point is, you must remember one thing. एक कहावत हम निमित्त है मात्र, तो निमित्त में जगमोहन लाल सिन्हा was a निमित्त for the judiciary, Indira Gandhi was a निमित्त for the political establishment, and T.N. Session was a निमित्त for the election machinery. So निमित्त मात्र है, but the point is bigger you become, एक कहावत है कि the bigger you become, आपको ज़्यादा पत्थर मिलेंगे. There's a saying in the one of the sayings that the bigger the trees, it will be, वो जब पानी तूफान आएगा ऐसे ऐसे हिलेगा और घास कभी हिलता नहीं है क्योंकि वो तो हिला ही हुआ है.
Banyan tree falls in another context.
So that way, that's what I'm saying. That it would not be fully, I would not agree, but I'll also agree partly that yes, but judiciary came of age with a high profile case being a political case. And you see, political case is always a high profile case.
So a very quick question to you, Siddharth Mishra, that eventually emergency is imposed, it continues for more than almost 2 years. But in March 1977, Indira Gandhi decides to go in for elections. In that particular campaign, or rather to what extent did the Allahabad High Court verdict judgment and the way in which Indira Gandhi had handled it, how much did it get reflected?
You see, I would still hold on to the premise that it was a case of politics. And Indira Gandhi by 77 realized that getting laws passed, it's
not going to work.
And she has to go back to the court, go back to people, and she went back to people. She lost it, but 3 years later she came back with a thumping majority. So, and Indira Gandhi, a totalitarian, authoritarian leader, also realized the beauty of democracy, also realized the spirit of democracy, also realized the gains to be made from democracy, and she decided to take the bait, go to the people. She lost it, and then that gave her the opportunity to get to play the victim, and get sympathy of people, and come back to power in 1980. So and then she went on to take much tougher decisions later, and as this. So this decision did, I would say, politics besides the point, but it firmly established the pillars of our society, and it gave a lot of autonomy to judiciary and to press and to media, and later on, and it started a process which is still evolving.
That's more important. Began a process which is still evolving. It's probably never going to stop. To try to understand from Maninder Thakur, did this case in any way, the Allahabad High Court case and Raj Narayan versus the state of Uttar Pradesh case, did it in any way become a kind of a deterrent to future politicians to be more careful in their campaign, to ensure that they observed laws a bit more, that yes, something like that can happen to anybody? If it could have happened to the Prime Minister, it can happen to anyone else.
I think so. The politicians took it very seriously, and of course after T.N. Session that became
there was a long gap between the Allahabad High Court verdict and T.N. Session. It is more than a decade and a half, but in between that period you have the 1977 elections, you have the 1980, and then most importantly 84 and the 89 elections.
Yeah, I think in between that, I'm sure that Allahabad High Court judgment must have given this impression, and people started taking it very seriously, that they would not use the
election which I covered, as a trainee journalist, it was 84, 85, Rajiv Gandhi wave. And I can say by the standards we have today, Rajiv Gandhi absolutely misused the government machinery. But nobody raised any point, because Rajiv Gandhi was having sympathy of people. And it was not the age of questioning media at that point of time spent on. And it was only, I would say, that 10 years later when T.N. Session educated people. And called himself a megalomaniac and said in doing so. But he did it. Even as a megalomaniac, he did it, And so, and And all the things have moved together. You have the independent media today, you have television cameras today.
There's definitely a huge sea change between the atmosphere
and we
and the
reporters
country.
have to look for stories.
Yes,
What else
it's
to look for?
completely different, way back in
Different era altogether now.
75, it's a completely different India that we are living in today. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming and discussing a program like that. It was very important to actually discuss one of the most important, verdicts, which acted as a kind of a check and balance, as far as elections and conduct of elections are concerned. Thank you very much, gentlemen. There are many people who feel that Justice Sinha had been too harsh on Mrs. Gandhi, but no one has ever said that the judge was politically motivated. The verdict reflected the way he read the law. After the victory in the 1971 polls and in the war with Pakistan, Indira Gandhi probably started believing that she was indeed Durga incarnate. But even she had to eat the humble pie. This happened in June 1975 and again in March 1977, when she lost the election held after the emergency was lifted. That in any way is another matter and subject for another discussion. Please give us your feedback on this program and write to us. Our email ID is history@tv@gmail.com. We will return next week. There will be another page from history and another panel of experts. Till then, goodbye.